It is Susie Ashworth here, founder of the Baby Business School and the Calm Birth School, mindset, marketing and messaging mentor to pre and postnatal specialists and creative entrepreneurs like you. And as some of you may know, I have just spent the last 3 days, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, in the land of the Brum. It was scary. Hey, Hannah. It wasn't that scary, actually. It was really, really nice. I was attending a workshop that was hosted by Nick James, the founder of Seriously Fun Business, and it was all about filling live events. And it was interesting because when I booked my, hi Caroline, when I booked my spot on, oh, hi April, hi, why do I feel like there are loads of people that have come on really quickly and I'm not sure, am I on my personal page or not? I always think that when I see lots of people pop up on my personal page rather than on my business page. But anyway, even if I am on my personal page, let's run with it. So yes, I spent 3 days at Seriously Fun Business learning how to fill live events. And when I booked onto it, my coach was like, why have you booked another course? Oh. Tara, can you turn that down? Tara's in the background. I can hear myself whittering on, which was very, very distracting. So when I booked on, my coach was like, why are you booking another course? Why are you booking another program? And I did think to myself, oh, why am I booking another program? Because I've filled live events before. You know, my first retreat was sold out. I've sold hypnobirthing classes. Like, why have I booked this? Why have I booked another thing? And I booked it because I know that where my strengths are, you know, there are loads of things. There are loads of things that I don't know about booking live events. And this guy has made multiple millions of pounds across 3 different businesses and is an expert in filling large rooms. So the last event that he did was called Expert Empires, and he sold 635 tickets, and he brought people over like Gary Vaynerchuk and Ryan Dice from Digital Marketeer. So this guy knows his stuff. And I'm not going to sit here thinking, me who's sold a couple of retreats, that I can compare with the amount of knowledge that he has. So I booked on and I took 3 days away from my house. And I want to just say, it was really interesting. As I was leaving, there was this real sense of, oh, I don't feel guilty. And then I felt guilty about the fact that I wasn't feeling guilty about leaving the family for 3 days. I actually felt quite, oh, this is nice. I've just packed my stuff and I'm going to get on the train on my own and I'm going to spend 3 days doing stuff for me. And I felt a little bit like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling like that. And as always, so the last time I did this is when I was hosting my own retreat. It is amazing to take time away from your normal environment and completely immerse yourself in a particular subject where you are able to learn and have the time to take on board and digest the things that are being shared with you. And absolutely, as Jerome was posting lovely pics of the kids, I was like, oh, I miss them. Totally miss them, but it was really important for me to take that time out, and I took so much away from that workshop that there is no doubt that if I implement even one thing, that I will easily 10x the amount that I spent on ongoing. It was that worth it. So I think the message here is and I have to say, for the kids, people are like, do you not feel bad about leaving your kids? I'm like, I'm leaving my children with their father, who, you know, we brought them into the world together, and over the next 120 days, the next 4 months, I'm going to be spending, I think it's 11 days outside, away from the house. on different events and conferences. And it's going to feel to people watching that I'm away all of the time, but the reality is it's not that I'm away all of the time. I will be away for 11 days over the next period of 4 months. The reason that I'm doing that, one is the Malawi trip, so that's very personal, but that's about contributing, and that's why I'm doing what I do. I want to earn a good amount of money so that I can give back to society. And the others is training. And that training allows me to finish work at 4 o'clock. It allows me to have Fridays off, and it will allow me to spend more time with my family. It allows Jerome to not be working. All of the time that I spend away is improving my knowledge and improving what I can give to you guys and improving what I can give to my family, as well as nourishing me. So I think that that's a really, really important thing. If ever you are thinking about taking time out, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days away from your family, and you're worried about that, should I really be doing this? Should I leave my kids for that period? I think that if they're with people that you trust and that you know are capable of looking after them, that actually it serves everyone. So that aside, let's get into this. I took so much away from this workshop, loads and loads of notes. I think about 19 pages of notes, and I've tried to distill it down into 10 key takeaways that I'm going to share with you today. So first takeaway is, I'm looking to say hello to everybody. Hey April, hey Jenny, hey Kerry, hey Leah, hey Susan. First takeaway is, be really clear on what your unique value proposition is. And what he meant by that is what makes you different. When you are positioning your pregnancy relaxation classes, or you have new products and services, how are you being clear on who you're targeting and exactly what it is that you are giving them? If you're using the same language as every other person, you are then competing in that commodity market. So I'm going to give you live examples of what is going on with me, because some of this workshop made me go, yes, I know the stuff. And other parts of this workshop made me think, oh, fuck, I used to work a bit harder on this. So, for example, my live event is called the Money, Mindset and Messaging Workshop, or the Mindset, Money and Messaging Workshop. And because I have been working with pre and postnatal specialists for the last 2 years, I really want to branch out a little bit, and I want to work with creative entrepreneurs, because I find that lots of the people who start working with me who are in the baby business, when we get to the core of what it is that they really want, and I help them tune into how to communicate their true message, often it has got nothing to do with babies. And so I really want to jump out and kind of broaden my niche. What came up for him, because he was like, how much money have you earned? And I was like, I'm in 6 figures. And he was like, what have you done to get there? And I explained the baby business school and the calm birth school and everything. And he just said, there is easily an extra £200,000 or £300,000 working within that niche. And the minute, if you are going to do a mindset messaging and money workshop from a marketing perspective, if you narrow that down to pre and postnatal specialists, as opposed to trying to talk to all creative entrepreneurs or all female entrepreneurs, then it is going to be much easier for you to fill that workshop. And I went, oh, I didn't want to hear that. You know, what makes me unique in terms of the plethora of marketing and business and mindset coaches out there is that I have been working specifically with pre and postnatal specialists, you know, and baby business owners, particularly service-based baby business owners. The minute I take that away and try to broaden that, I become less unique, which makes it harder for me to sell my services. So my question to you, particularly if you're going with something new, or just generally, even with your current classes, are you making it very clear either in who you're targeting, or so who your target audience is, or why your class is different in your strapline in your branding, is that clear to who you're targeting? If it's not, you haven't got your unique value proposition nailed. Please, you've got to give me hearts or thumbs up or questions so I know that this is hitting home, because this was a real, it was a real like wake up call to me. And it means on the back of this, I'm going to be changing some of my my landing pages and my adverts for my workshop so I can be a lot more specific. Thank you. I'm glad this is hitting home. If you have any questions, please fire them away. The other really massive thing that came up for me is he was thinking so big, and he was asking what has never been done before. And I know that when you kind of start asking what has never been done before, it can be a bit overwhelming. If that feels too big for you, think about again, what can I do that is different? And the examples that he was able to give is that he was really an unknown, bringing someone like Gary Vaynerchuk to the UK. So what's never been done before? Gary V's never come to the UK before. I'm going to get Gary V there. And what was interesting is, although he thought about the worst case scenario, so if I bring Gary V over and I pay him 125 grand to come over and I only sell 100 tickets, what's the worst case scenario going to be? He also was thinking about the big highest vision for yourself. And I feel like this has been coming through my messaging over the last couple of weeks about thinking from your highest self, not limiting yourself, and thinking, if I was going to do the big thing, how would I be acting now? And that came through so strongly for me. The reason that he has made so much money in his business, is the reason that he's managed to get so many people for his events, is that he hasn't been thinking small. He started off with wanting to invite somebody over that was huge, and he reached out and he had the conversation. So I'm inviting you to look at what it is you're doing and ask yourself, how can I make this a different experience for my client, for my end user? I want to just check, I'm just quickly going ahead. I'm going to talk about partnerships in a minute, but that is and go crazy. Think about the biggest possible thing that you could do. Think about the one action that you could take right now in order to get one step closer to that thing, and just start putting it out there. And I'm going to talk very briefly about being unattached from the outcome. That is important, because if we become from a mindset perspective, if we are so desperate to make it happen, we sit in a place of, well, it hasn't happened yet, and I'm not getting signed yet, and it hasn't happened yet, and what we focus on expands. So that is bad. But I think thinking big and then taking big bold actions and being like, you know what, we're just going to put it out there and see what happens, that is a really good thing. So where can you be thinking bigger? What is the highest vision that you have for your product or service? What is the one action you can take today to get one step closer to it? Go big or go home. I don't mean go big or go home, but for those of you who are not just in this for pocket money, for those of you who want to get to 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, you have to be thinking big. You cannot just be thinking about serving people on a local level. And there's nothing wrong with serving people on a local level, but if you want to reach that multiple mid 6-figure range, then you have to put your head above the parapet by doing things other people aren't doing. So that was number 2. 3, this was so good to get it reaffirmed, and it's something that I've been playing around with a couple of my clients at the moment, because obviously I and lots of the people that you follow talk so much about creating your offers from a place of alignment and creating something that really, really fires you up. And I absolutely think that that is important. The problem is if you purely come from what it is that you want and what you think people need, it doesn't matter how amazing the idea is, if people don't want it, if they don't recognize the problem in the thing that you are positioning as the thing that they need, they will not buy, and that's where the disconnect is. We have to, we have to be in alignment. We have to be truly connected with our core message, absolutely for sure. And I believe that that comes first. Then we have to be marketeers and we have to think about how we package that up so we are answering the things that people want. Does that make sense? It is such a fine line, but I think that anybody who has launched anything where we absolutely know this is what they need and it hasn't been bought, it usually hasn't been bought because either enough people haven't seen the offer or because it's something that they need rather than they want. So have a look at your numbers so that you can get very clear on whether enough people have seen your offer. And if enough people have and you know that they need it, you have to start getting creative with the way that you're packaging it so that your service is answering something that they want. Oh, I love that one because I've come across with it, and as I say, I'm working with clients around answering wants as opposed to needs, and it's exciting as you get closer and closer and closer to problem solving. A really useful tip here is to look at the language that your potential clients are using when they describe what's going on with them, and be very, very clear on what the consequences are if they do not follow through with solving what the problem is. They want the transformation, so they want the end result. So talk using the language that they use about the end result that they are talking about. Does that make sense? Oh, this is another really great one. Tip number 4. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Now, he was talking about this from a revenue perspective, so particularly from events. And laymen may think that you make all of your money from events by selling tickets. And what was so interesting, hey Amy, what was so interesting about this are the number of different ways that this guy was able to generate revenue outside of ticket sales. So he had masterminds, he had round tables, he had upsells, he had VIP levels, he had elite levels. There were so many different ways that he was able to make money from, aside from selling spots to his event. But from a marketing perspective, and this is different, so we all know that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Some people will say go hard on one marketing strategy until you have nailed it and don't do anything else, and that works for them. And this guy has lots of different marketing strategies. So he is predominantly an offline company. So the event where he sold 635 tickets, he sold 45% of his tickets online and 55% of them offline. And the 55% that he sold offline, he sold speaking at other people's events, hosting his own free events. What else did he do? He did lots of different things. He didn't say the only thing I'm going to do is Facebook ads. Joint ventures, so partnering up with other people that had his audience. There were so many different avenues. And so for you guys who are launching, and I personally think that because most of you guys who will be watching this either live or on the replay, you are at the start of your journeys. The more touch points, the more opportunities you give people to see you, hear your message, where you ask for the sale, the better. And this isn't about doing all of the things so you feel really, really burnt out and you have no energy, but having a very clear plan of who you're going to approach, where you're going to spend your money, what you're going to write about. Hey, Nissa, you beautiful human being. All of those things are powerful. If you only do one blog with one call to action at the end and 5 people see it, you have not launched and people will not buy. If you are doing a range of things where there are lots of different calls to action, you give yourself a much better chance of converting potential clients into customers. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you? Does that freak you out? I don't want it to freak you out. As I say, the best way to have that not freak you out is to make a clear plan so that you don't feel scattergun. But I thought that was a good one. Number 5, if you are, this is specifically for people who are doing live events where you're probably going to have like 10 or more people. But he was like, if you are not capturing mobile phone numbers, you are missing a trick, because people are opening their email less and less. So around a 20% open rate is average. And if you have a list of 1,000 people and only 200 people are opening their emails because they've opted into something from you, if you have a text message, at the moment that medium is massively under-resourced, or people are using it, people aren't using it for marketing. So if you get a text message, you're much more likely to respond. This is really, really powerful if you are running or going to run free events, because less people show up for free events because they're not as invested. If you've got a text message to remind them 2 days before, 1 day before, a couple of hours before in the day, you're giving yourself a much better opportunity of getting them there. And it's even the same for people who have paid for tickets. Now, for me, if I pay for a ticket, I'm going to turn up most of the time, but lots of people don't. Having text messages gets more bums on seats for you. I'm just going to read this comment from Claire. Hey Susie, what are your thoughts on telesummits as a way of reaching a larger audience, as in hosting your own? Are there easier ways? Okay, so I've done a telesummit before where I've had lots of guest speakers and it was quite stressful. But I do love a webinar. I don't host them myself very much, but I do love a webinar. You can do a telesummit and you can get lots of guest speakers in. You just have to be on it with your technology, but it's a great way of reaching. And if you're partnering up with people who have larger audiences or have an audience that you know are going to be interested in your product, then it's great. It's absolutely great. A telesummit is where it's like having a webinar, but you will have multiple speakers. So for you, Nissa, your ideal might be to have Millie Hill from the Positive Birth Movement, me on, a couple of other people on that you know have large Facebook following or email lists, and what you would do is invite them on to speak about their chosen topic, which will be complementary to yours. You get them to email their lists, and you get them to invite their own audience on, and then you will host the telesummit over usually a number of days. So there's a VBAC telesummit going on, I think in a month or so. So it is done. There's a breastfeeding telesummit. There's a couple of big ones that go on in our world. They are a bit of a ball ache, and honestly, there are less internet marketing savvy pre and postnatal birth professionals, so it's a little bit harder to get the engagement. But ideally, if you have someone who has got a really engaged list, or at least 20% of the people are opening up the emails, and it's a really great way to add people to your list without having to pay for traffic. So it's a good idea, you just have to be organized. There we go. Okay, this again is specifically for people who are thinking about running events. Free events are easier to fill because they are free, but the show up rate is low. So if you are organising a free event where you want 50 people to show up, normally you can expect 20 to 30% of the people who have registered to show up. So if you want 50 people to show up, you need to get 150 people registered. And that was a real eye-opener for me. It was a real eye-opener for me. What he recommended is if you are an unknown, and so I would be classified as an unknown, you are better off starting with 3 events versus paid events unless you have a really good model for, that you have cash flow so you can invest in Facebook ads to promote the event, and you have a good model, business model that enables you to monetize after the ticket sales, because you can expect lower ticket sales. So that was a real like, oh, I'm doing a paid event in about 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, but the beauty of going to this workshop for me and having the skills I have around my mindset and knowing what it means to act from my highest self, I have already been able to take really quite big steps in giving myself a better chance to buck the trend that this guy highlighted for me. But it was what he said made it, one, even more important for me to be unattached from the outcome, but two, to be prepared to take big, hairy, scary steps to have any chance at all. And I think that we massively underestimate what it takes to have a big launch, to do what, when I wrote the post about comparing today, we see somebody who says, oh yeah, I've had a $60,000 launch, or £60,000 launch, I've got this many people in the room. Quite often, when we're outside of the people that know us, what it takes to get there is really difficult. Well, not really difficult, I'm going to reframe that. I'm going to rephrase that rather. Usually it takes a lot more money than what we are aware of. So a lady that I know, she's very high profile. She's just had a #1 best-selling book. And I asked her how much money that she'd spent on Facebook ads, and she said $10,000. And I was like, oh, And obviously there are outliers. There are a few people who don't need to spend all of that money to get a #1 bestseller. There are people who have, and Instagram influencers are a really good example of that. They haven't spent thousands and thousands of pounds to get wherever they've got to, but at the same time, there are less people that have tens or hundreds of thousands of followers. So just be really, really clear that it takes time, effort, and alignment for everything to fall into place. Webinars tend to work best when you have paid to get a bigger audience in. The first webinar that I did, which was how to make your first £1,000, I don't think that I paid for ads, and I had 100 people register because it was very, very specific, and it was very different from what other people were talking about at the time, because everyone was like, how to make 6 figures, and I was like, how to make your first £1,000. There weren't really many people talking about it at the time, so it got a lot of shares and a lot of traction. But usually you have to be prepared to spend a little bit to get extra traffic in. Okay, I think I've already said that. Joint ventures. I don't know if this is tip number 7 or tip number 8, but joint ventures, so teaming up with people who have your audience, is a really, really powerful way and a low-cost way to get your message in front of people who are going to be interested. And when it comes to the thinking big point that I made earlier on, think big when it comes to who you might approach to be your joint venture partner. Think about your ideal people, have a look at your market, have a look at what it is that you're looking to sell, have a look at complementary parallel markets, and write a list of 20 people that you would love to work with, going from the really big names to people who are just 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. And write to them all, not saying, here's my thing, will you promote it for me? But looking to build relationships with those people and looking to see where you can add value to them. So a really good example of this is the lovely Nissa reaching out to me to say, can I be a Calm Birth School affiliate? Which I said, yes, of course you can. And immediately that makes me think she's adding value to me. And immediately that makes me think, oh, yeah, that would be great for me to be an affiliate for Align Your Baby. So don't always, never, in fact, never, unless you have a relationship with somebody and you're being introduced by somebody, never go in with what can you do for me. Always go in with what can I do for you. Which means when thinking about your joint venture partnerships, you have to think long term. It's not something that happens overnight, but that was a really powerful one for me. Number 8, this wasn't in the Bums on Seats bootcamp section. This is one of the bonus sessions that he offered, but it was so great. The bonus session was from his mum, Nikki V, and she is a master coach. And she shared with us her top 7 questions. So her whole premise session was about the fact that, generally speaking, most people ask themselves really shitty questions. And we can directly correlate how great things are going on the outside with the questions that we're asking ourselves on the inside. And the number 1 question that she shared with us was, what is the most critical thing that you need to resolve right now? I'm going to say it one more time. What is the most critical thing that you need to resolve right now? And actually, I'm going to give you the second question as well. The second question was, what's it costing you to not handle that thing? And I thought that they were 2 really, really great questions. Let's think about the one thing that is most critical to our business success, to our life success, to our relationships. Like, what's the one thing that we need to solve? And what's it going to cost me to sit here in procrastination? Like, let's just take the right action that we need to take in order to solve that one thing. Let that go and live the best lives that we can live. It sounds, I know that it's sometimes easier said than done, but it starts with asking the right question. So I'm going to leave that with you, lovely ladies, and ask yourself, particularly if there is an area that you're feeling stuck in right now, an area that makes you feel contracted, ask yourself, what's the most critical thing that I need to resolve right now in order to relieve that tension? Number 9, and Claire, this might be relevant to you if you're thinking about doing a webinar. The ideal lead time for a webinar is 2 weeks in terms of your Facebook ads and inviting people to join on. And ideally, if you're using a Facebook ad, you want to test for a week prior. So 1 week testing, 2 weeks going all in, promoting it to as many people as you know, and that can be Facebook ads, it can be joint ventures, it can be blog posts, but getting it all out within that 2 weeks, going hard, because otherwise people reprioritize the things that are important to them. Number 10, and I can't remember whether this came up in the boot camp or whether this was just my thing, but when creating a product, be really, really clear why your audience should give a shit. So don't just say, I've got this amazing thing. I've got this amazing thing that you should give a shit about because. I've got this amazing thing that's going to make a difference to your life because that is going to help you do this. Just shouting out, I've got this thing, is the same as saying, buy my stuff. So be really clear in your messaging so that you are always, whether you're selling, whether you're making a direct offer in a traditional sense, or whether you're writing a blog post or a homepage, every time you share a piece of information that you think your audience should care about, always say, this is important to you because, spell it out. Otherwise, it is pretty, I'm not going to say pointless, but you're missing so many tricks. You're missing a trick to engage with them, to get them thinking, to plant the seeds of why your thing is a solution to their problem. So they are my top 10 tips. I'm going to recap really quickly. What is your unique value proposition? What has never been done before? Give your audience what they want, not what they need. Don't put all of your eggs into one basket. So share the love when it comes to promoting. Also think about how else you can, particularly with events, think about other revenue streams aside from ticketing. And I should say as well that if you're running a service and you're using Facebook ads, not putting all of your eggs in one basket is also using retargeting. That is super, super important. Top tip number 5 is text messaging. Text messaging is really, really underutilized. 6 is, remember that free events, if you are an unknown, are easier to fill than paid events. So think about going free to start with, and then think about how you can monetize people once they come into the room. Yeah, tip number 7 is related to that. So you're thinking about the different areas that you are able to monetize, not just ticket sales. 8 is joint ventures, really, really powerful. Think about your top 10 people and then think about people who are just 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. All of them are good. Ask better questions. What is the most critical thing for you to resolve right now? Lead time for webinars are 2 weeks, 1 week of testing with your ads. And 10, when creating a product, be clear on why your audience should give a shit. Right, that was a particularly long one from me today. I hope that you have found that useful. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments and I will see you for the next one. Okay. Au revoir, my lovelies.